Welcome to part 2 of the new real estate laws. It is December 3rd today, and there were some big laws that were going to be potentially passed in a settlement in August of this year. So it's been a few months now. The settlement has passed. It's been settled. It was about $418 million settlement. Came out of it was 2 new laws that really changed the landscape of how we do real estate, how buyers buy homes, how sellers sell homes, and how real estate agents operate their business. So let's talk about the 2 new laws. 1, real estate compensation for buyers agents was removed from the multiple listing service. I'll explain that in a minute. 2, buyers now have to sign a buyer representation agreement with a realtor before they go out and look at properties. That is just radically different. So we're going to talk about these 2 changes and how they're impacting things. So first is the compensation being taken out of the multiple listing service. So to understand why this is important, let's just go back to how business was done a year or 2 ago. A year or 2 ago, if I'm a realtor and I'm going to show homes to a buyer, in the multiple listing service, it would show me how much that seller is willing to compensate me to bring a buyer to their home. Now, new construction communities that don't advertise in the MLS, they pay us fees to bring buyers to their communities because they want to have multiple buyers, get multiple offers, which raises the price of their communities. This is still how it's done with most new construction communities. But with regular resale properties, they've taken the compensation out of the multiple listing service. So now if I'm showing a buyer a home, I don't know if that seller is willing to pay any type of compensation. Why did they do this? Well, the spirit of the law is that they no longer want the buyer's agent's compensation negotiated up front. They rather want the buyers to negotiate the buyer's agent's compensation directly. So that means that the Department of Justice wants home buyers to meet with a realtor, hear what their services are, see the value that they have to provide, and determine how much they're going to pay them directly. Now, I'm going to talk to you about how this actually relates to how real estate is happening right now, but that is the spirit of the law. That is what they want. They are not wanting sellers to pay compensation anymore, or at least not have it negotiated upfront in the listing agreement. Prior to this, when I would go and list a home, I would tell the seller, here's my commission for my services. We're going to be doing all this. Buyer's agent's going to bring a buyer through the home, and here's what they need to be compensated. So that is kind of how it was dealt with prior. Now, real estate's done differently all over the country, but in Orange County, California, home prices rising really quickly. And when you have multiple offers on a property, you end up getting a huge premium. So sellers here in Orange County, I feel like don't really care. But other parts of the country, this has become a really contentious topic. That is what has changed. They've taken it out of the MLS. They've tried to put it back in the hands of the realtor and the buyer to negotiate amongst themselves. A typical buyer's agent, if they are a brand new realtor, they're probably worth somewhere around 1%. If they're brand new and they're just starting in the last 2 to 3 years. I might pay, if I was going to, I would never use a brand new realtor, but if I was going to use them, I'd probably pay them somewhere around 1%. An experienced realtor, somebody who's at least been in the business for 5 to 10 years, probably worth around 2%. And somebody who's really, really good at what they do, they're experienced, they have lots of testimonials, online reviews, they've got some value propositions, can be worth anywhere between 2.5% to 3.5%. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that is the first change. The second change is that buyers now have to sign a written buyer representation agreement with the realtor that they plan to work with before they go out and look at homes. So this really changes the landscape because, again, we're going to go back. How was business done a year or 2 ago? Well, buyer would get excited about a property. They would go out and they would look at homes, and they would do no planning. They just kind of go out and look at homes. They get excited about a home, and then they kind of start planning about buying it, right? So it's kind of backwards. And so they would typically meet a realtor either at an open house or at a community event. Maybe they got a referral from a family or friend, or maybe they got a postcard from someone. So they would essentially meet a realtor, and there was kind of a no obligation relationship there, right? They could work with that agent for 6 months, have that realtor show them homes, for 6 months, a year. I've seen realtors who've shown clients homes for 2 years. And then they could literally write an offer with a completely different agent the next day. It was super high risk for the realtor, and it was just not a really good dynamic. So now what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to say, hey, let's establish a relationship with a realtor before you go out and look at a home. We want you to establish a relationship with them. We want you to outline compensation. Make sure we're outlining who's representing you and outline the time frame of it. So like, how long is this agreement for? Essentially, they're wanting you to basically hire a realtor before you go out and look at homes. Now, here's the truth. It is so much better for us realtors if you commit to us before we go out and show you a ton of homes. I mean, any realtor can tell you horror stories of working with people for years before they tell them, hey, I decided to rent, I'm moving to a new area, or hey, I bought with a listing agent at some open house I was at. That's a really, really lot of time to invest for absolutely zero pay. This can actually turn out to benefit both the real estate agent and both the buyer. Because now we're clear on who are you working with. Are you going to work with me? Are you going to work with your cousin who just got their license last week? Who's going to be your realtor and submit an offer with you? So it outlines all of that up front. You should not be afraid to sign a representation agreement with a realtor. You will want to interview a couple of realtors, see who is a good fit for you, because this is what a lot of consumers don't understand, is that there are realtors that specialize in certain niches, and there are realtors who just do two completely different things. For example, I know realtors who specialize in luxury real estate in one neighborhood in Laguna Beach. So if you're selling that home in Laguna Beach, you might want to interview that realtor or one or two realtors that specialize in that neighborhood. If you are a first-time home buyer, you might want to work with a realtor who's more first-time home buyer friendly. So you want to interview a couple of realtors and find somebody that really matches your needs. But that is the second big change. So compensation's taken out of the MLS. They now want you to negotiate it with your realtor up front, and they want the buyer to pay the compensation. And then secondly, you have to sign a written agreement before you go out and tour homes. So when you meet with realtors to interview them, you can discuss compensation and terms and see who is competitive, what they have to offer, and hopefully the choice will be a little bit more clear, because quite honestly, it wasn't clear before. I would meet with hundreds of people at open houses who were working with realtors that frankly their license should have been banned. They should never be allowed to practice real estate. But because they were a cousin or a neighbor or a friend, and for that sole purpose, the client worked with them and they ended up searching for homes for 6 months, a year, prices went up and they ended up not even being able to buy. So this can actually turn out to be really good because it's more of a clear value proposition now. You want the realtor you work with to feel like, hey, this is an equal exchange here, okay? So now let's talk about compensation. You're a buyer and you're buying a home. You're putting a big down payment up already. You have your closing costs, so you've got lots of expenses. The last thing you're gonna wanna do is pay a buyer's agent's compensation for an extreme amount, right, of 2 to 3% out of pocket. So here's a couple of options for you. Number one, here's what I do with my clients. Every single home that I have closed escrow on since the settlement, we now just request the seller pay our compensation in our offer, and we basically go back to negotiating it directly with the seller. I mean, it's essentially the same exact thing. They all seem like they're still willing to pay compensation, and not much has changed. It has virtually been business as usual. So when I go to write an offer for my client, I will typically request 3% compensation that the seller pays for. They might come back and negotiate with me and say, hey, we'll do it for 2.5%. Buyer doesn't pay anything, they're happy. I get my compensation, I'm happy. It's a win-win. But what do you do if the seller won't pay compensation? So, couple of options. What I tell my clients is, look, if there is a home that doesn't pay compensation, number one, you don't have to buy the home. So there's no pressure to go forward on the deal. And number two, if you want to, you can pay me compensation and we can go forward on the deal. But I try to do everything I can to not have my buyer pay compensation Because my honest belief is that the seller, they're advertising a product and they're enlisting, and this is not how the Department of Justice sees it, and this is not how they're wanting to see it, but it's just the truth. You're enlisting buyers agents to go out and show homes and work for you to bring a buyer to your home. And, those buyers, with inflation and with everything going on, they don't have a lot of extra disposable income. So if I'm going to sell my home personally, my own personal home, I would absolutely want to compensate buyers agents to show my home. Why? Because number one, a buyer represented by a realtor is more educated, hands down. I know clients who have, I have clients who have bought or sold 5 different homes, 6 different homes. They think they're savvy. We help 5 or 6 different homes a month sometimes. So the level of education that a home buyer is going to have if they're working with a realtor is going to be better. And the better educated, the more likely they are to stick. Number 2, if I compensate agents who bring a buyer, I'm going to open it up to more buyers coming to look at my property. So that's just what I would do personally, because I like multiple offers on my home. Multiple offers are going to typically pay for the compensation in the sales price. So these are the update in the laws. Here's the summary. You got to sign an agreement when you work with a realtor before going out to look at homes. Number 2, you have to discuss compensation with them. Hopefully you work with a savvy realtor like myself who has a track record of 100% of the time so far, the seller pays for my commission, so not much has changed. And then number 3, you got to interview realtors. You got to see who works for you, and you have to find a realtor that offers good value. Review their testimonials online. Ask for references to speak to some of their clients. This has been very helpful for me because, it's not, salespeople can say whatever they want, but if you speak to a past client, you can get an actual gauge of did this person have a good experience or not, and then try to find somebody who specializes in what you're looking for. So hope this update was helpful for you. Comment below any questions you have. If you are searching for a home in the Orange County area, feel free to reach out to me. Again, typically my services have been paid for by the seller almost 100% of the time. I've got off-market properties, and I have a lot of different value propositions for home buyers. And comment below if you have any other questions. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I'll keep going with further updates as things progress.